Arkansas on the verge of agricultural disaster. 1 in 3 or more farms in Arkansas could be shuttered by next spring if the federal government doesn't provide some type of supplemental assistance to farmers this fall, Agricultural Council of Arkansas President Joe Menser told Talk Business and Politics. Commodity prices continue to plunge, and as of mid-August, the state's agricultural sector was projected to lose $1.14 billion this season, and that number has ballooned to another $300 million by the end of the month to $1.4 billion as rice prices spiraled downward to an 8-year low. And the overall losses will almost certainly continue to rise, Menser said. The Agricultural Council has submitted 2 letters, one to the White House and the other to the U.S. Trade Representative, seeking relief in a number of areas, said Agricultural Council Executive Director Andrew Grobmeier. The federal government has reported a record $100 billion in tariff collections, and many in the farm sector would like some of that money to be used to supplement farmers, he said. First of all, we're in dire straits, Menser said. Agriculture is in turmoil right now. The tumult in agricultural industry will impact many other ancillary businesses too. Agricultural equipment dealers, parts dealers, crop dusting companies, and many others have had sales plunge as much as 50% this year, Menser said. Banks are reporting that as much as 25% of current farmers won't be able to get financed for next year as of right now, and that number will continue to balloon, he added. Many rural banks that rely on the agricultural sector may be shuttered as well if relief isn't distributed, he said. Some actions taken by lawmakers have helped the farm community during this downward spiral that began 3 years ago, Grobmeier said. The Emergency Commodity Assistance Program saved some farmers up to 25% of their projected losses. The recently passed federal budget, dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill, has provisions that raise reference prices. But it won't take effect until the 2026 harvest season, and many farmers in Arkansas won't be in business next year if something isn't done, Grobmeier said. The ongoing shuffle of the global trade markets has disproportionately impacted farmers, and that's why the organization is seeking measures that will funnel tariff dollars into farmer supplemental program, Grobmeier said. Even if trade negotiations are finalized soon, it won't be in time to help farmers with this year's crop, Menser added. See, what I've seen speculated, all right, and I think this makes a lot of sense to me, right? When you looked at like the economic crash of 2007 and other large scale like agricultural and just economic crashes and downturns in general, those are the opportunities that rich people use to consolidate their land grabs, right? Those are the times where you see the biggest land grabs. You see small family farms being sold off in favor of large agricultural businesses buying them up and creating these giga farms and basically, I've heard it theorized that this isn't a bug, that this is a feature, right? That they are not only okay with this, but they are sort of trying to facilitate the elimination of the small family farm and the funneling and the reallocating of all of those lands and the power and the resources that those lands necessarily entail to more moneyed interests, towards the interests that are more sycophantic towards Trump and his cronies. Another looming problem for farmers is storage, Menser said. Commodity prices were so low last year that many farmers kept grains in storage rather than selling them at a loss, he said. Now the new crop is coming in and there's no place to store it. I think you're going to see a lot of grain piled up on the ground, he said. I've never seen anything like this. The Agricultural Council sent a letter to the U.S. Trade Representative to address the ongoing issues with Brazil. That country is slashing and burning its rainforests to create agricultural land, and it sells most of its commodities to China. The Chinese are investing heavily in infrastructure in the country, building railroads, roads, and ports to transport these commodities. American farmers have to pay tech fees, meet emission standards, and pay much higher labor costs, Menser said. This means that Brazilian farmers can produce soybeans at a much lower cost and can sell them at a lower cost, putting U.S. farmers at a disadvantage, he said. This is literally It amazes me the amount of people that have never taken an economics class, right? This is just basic comparative advantage, okay? Brazil, put it very bluntly and straightforwardly, Brazil is a much poorer country, right? Their average wage that you would need to pay a farm worker is much, much lower. And the barriers to entry to, cutting down rainforest and producing a soybean farm or whatever are much, much lower. And with all of that understood, you should put that into your comparative advantage equation and go, okay, it's much cheaper and efficient for them to produce soybeans, in comparison to us, but it's much more efficient for us to produce like Netflix and those kind of things. And that is the exchange we're going to do. All right. You guys make the soybeans, we'll make the Netflixes and those kind of things. And we'll do the old switcheroo and we'll be good. Right. That's necessarily a trade imbalance, but that's the whole point of comparative advantage, right? Like not every country is going to be maximally good at producing everything, and not every country is going to be able to compete with every other country at their ability to produce everything, right? You don't want that. You don't want to fight against the concept of comparative advantage. You want to acknowledge it and then take advantage of it as much as possible or run with it. About 70% of commodities grown in Brazil go to China. This allows the Chinese to coerce farmers there to buy equipment and products from Chinese vendors, Grobmeier added. More than 20 years ago, Menser went to Brazil and they were not using modern equipment, seeds, or farming techniques. That has all changed, he said. Brazil is a key source of pain for American farmers, Grobmeier said. No, no. It's more than 20 years ago, Menser went to Brazil and they were not using modern equipment, seeds, or farming techniques. Well, I would think from like a humanist perspective, right? You would think it's a great thing that they've advanced to the point that now they have actual industrial agricultural capacity, right? That they aren't just like sustenance farming and using like old, ancient, antiquated technology like a donkey pulling a plow or something, right? They actually can afford a tractor. But you're mad because they're buying these stuff from China, that China is making these products affordable enough for these kind of people so that they're able to integrate it into their farming, into their lifestyle, right? But you're mad because they're not buying it from the US, and you're mad because they get this because the global economy and our interconnectedness has helped them in such a way that it disadvantages you, right? This just smells of we want to go in there and coup them, right? This stinks of go in there and coup them because we want to make more money and they're undercutting our ability to maximize profits or whatever. Grobmeier said he hopes this political clout will produce results soon. If not, the outlook for the farm community is bleak, he said. There is a true disaster looming on the horizon. So yeah, I'm not convinced that this isn't a feature and not a bug, right? I'm not convinced that this isn't sort of part of some grander overall plan, and maybe not an explicit plan, but more of a sort of we're okay with it happening this kind of way. If it pans out that all these small all these small farms have to sell their plots of land to more big money interests, right? We're okay with that sort of thing. That's just the impression I'm getting, right? I'm either getting the impression that this was an explicit plan, part of the plan, and this is a feature, not a bug, or that they're more or less just like they understood that this was going to happen, but they're okay with it, right? And also the idea that like Brazil and their ability to produce soybeans cheaply because they've gotten modern farming equipment from China is the reason why your soybean farm in Arkansas is not competitive, or why you are having a trouble is just insanely stupid, right? It may be Okay, that may be correct, but what would be the conclusion from that, right? I would assume that their conclusion is like, well, some sort of economic policy between Brazil to reduce their competitive advantage compared to us, or to go in there and literally coup them or something like that, right? That is the only conclusion I can think of for somebody making this kind of argument, right? But like, you should be, from a humanist perspective, and you should be happy that they've advanced in this kind of way, that they've uplifted themselves, and from a comparative advantage economic perspective, you should be happy because it shows that we are in the superior, like advantageous, more economically evolved place than the Brazilians, to where, yeah, we don't have to make soybeans. We can make things like Netflix and services that, are far more profitable to produce.